So you'll just need to kind of acknowledge that. I think there's something comes up on your screen that just says we're now recording. So the idea of the session is really to kind of tell you a bit about the P3O Practitioner exam. And I'm just going to, for those of you who don't necessarily know PMO Learning, Lindsay and I set up the organisation about 5 years ago now because we wanted to focus on training, educating and supporting individuals who work in and around PMOs. So there's lots of things out there for project and program managers, but for those people who specifically work in setting up the infrastructure of supporting projects and programs, who get involved with things like portfolio management, there's not really a training organisation out there that specialises in that. And both Lindsay and I or experienced PMO people, you know, it's what we've done all of our life, and I keep kind of showing this, is that, you know, I do actually have it tattooed on my wrist now, because at the kind of the grand old age of 56, I'm not going to be doing anything else with my life. So, you know, in terms of what I do now is very much working with Lindsay on this training company, but also we've established the House of PMO, which is a professional body for those who work in PMOs. And so, but I have had 17 years experience of working in and around projects and PMOs. So running a number of PMOs, working inside PMOs. And for the last 16 years, I've been doing it kind of from the other side, where I've been working with project program managers, working with organisations to help them establish effective PMOs in their organisation, improve project and program delivery. So the P3O is kind of particularly dear to my heart because I was the lead author of the AXLOS Best Management Practice around this particular subject, and also been involved in another set of publications around the competency framework of knowledge management, as well as some kind of principles and a handbook. So very much kind of not actively running a PMO at the minute, but still very much working with PMO managers. In fact, this morning spent some time coaching a PMO manager in terms of their role. So hopefully kind of still very much in tune with what's happening in the real world from a delivery perspective. So the purpose of today's session, I think, is kind of twofold. Firstly, we do want to just talk a little bit about kind of what we do from a virtual training perspective, because I think that's important. And even though we've been in lockdown and kind of supposedly kind of come out of lockdown, the fact that we're still delivering training virtually, which I think is the kind of become more and more standard practice, there's still a huge kind of difference between the way different organisations deliver that virtual training. So I want to tell you a bit about the virtual training, and then we're also going to kind of focus on specifically the P3O Practitioner exam. So we've done a taster session for the foundation exam, and we're going to talk about kind of how that then kind of uplifts, and whether you've done your foundation exam, you want to do that, whether it's worth kind of going on to the foundation, the practitioner level, and what those kind of key differences are, and how we approach the delivery of the training, and kind of what that means for you as a delegate in that particular course and certification. So let's just talk a little bit about the virtual classroom and kind of the differences between kind of being in the classroom and, you know, as a part of the PMO conference that's taken place in June, we're actually running a one-day PMO Learn, where we're going to be doing we're going to probably have a kind of up to 200 people in the room doing, and that'll be fantastic to go back into a kind of a physical classroom. When we're kind of coming into a virtual classroom, I think a lot of people think there's actually going to be it's going to be kind of lecture style, and I'm going to be standing there doing all the talking, and there's kind of be no kind of conversations. And I would argue if you're in kind of that kind of situation, it's much more like a webinar, where it's kind of something that happens in the background. People kind of listen to what's been said, kind of take their own notes, and it's a very kind of passive involvement. And I think actually what we're trying to do when we deliver our training, we absolutely try to make it as interactive as we would as we were sitting in the classroom. So if you think about what it's like sitting in a classroom where you've got kind of 12 individuals kind of sitting around the table, there's obviously conversations where I'll say, oh, kind of, Charles, what did you think of that? And kind of, Hannah, have you got an answer to that? And kind of, Yash, kind of what's your view on that? And Tim, what happens in your organisation? And we very much do that in the virtual classroom. We also use the technology as best we can to replicate the exercises that we undertake. So we utilize all of the things like breakout rooms, so we can separate off into groups, so we have some group discussions. So the exercises that we do during the day are actually very much as you would feel, kind of speaking with the other delegates. We mix the groups up so you get to speak to all of the other delegates who are there on the course. And it was really interesting. I had somebody come on the course one day, and they said, "I'm not going to put my screen on, Eileen, because I want to be able to be doing with. I want to be dealing with some emails and what have you as we kind of go through the day." And I said, no, it's not kind of just like the radio station you have playing in the background. We need you to be kind of actively involved. And we do have, we've developed a set of house rules over time that we ask the delegates to sign up onto. So we've got, we ask people to kind of sign up to these to enrich their own learning experience, as well as the other delegates who are on the course. So firstly, in terms of actually kind of behave as you were in a physical classroom. So, you wouldn't kind of stroll in 5 minutes late after a break or after lunch. You wouldn't be sitting there kind of reading the newspaper or kind of answering emails in a classroom. So we want you to kind of keep as directed and involved as you can. And we're conscious that people are sitting on their PCs, the joy of kind of being at home. But we do ask you to things like shut down your emails and what have you, just so you're actually focused on the things that are going to be displayed on the screen. We do get you to kind of, there are some interesting kind of things. I think most of us have kind of got used to them after a while, but it still is a bit of a, it does impact some of the conversations, because Zoom is specifically kind of tailored to kind of recognize when people are talking and kind of zooms over to them. So when 2 or 3 people are trying to talk at the same time, it isn't like being in the class, kind of being face to face with somebody. So we do actually use chat and emoticons, and so chat's become a big part of our life. I think we've all increased our typing skills as we kind of do more chat as we kind of go through that. So the trainers are very adept at kind of keeping an eye on track. So they can kind of get people's kind of input. But also we also recognise, and probably the bits that's probably more difficult to do, is to try to encourage each of the learners to actually learn from each other. Because yes, I've got some experience and I kind of know the theory, but actually it's really interesting to hear what other organisations are doing and how other people are approaching some of the issues that are there being discussed. And so we do, as I say, one of the reasons why we do the breakout rooms and why we mix people around is to give you the opportunity to talk to the other delegates. And again, through chat, we never just, and I know I've been on a few webinars where the organisation controls it, so you can only speak to the tutor, whereas we leave it open for you to kind of talk to anybody and everybody on the course. So even if you put something less than positive in there, everybody gets to see it, and we can kind of work with that. So from a technology perspective, and again, we're conscious that organisations don't always allow all of the technology. So we've tried to use the tools as best we can that are that cause least anguish. If you ever want to run an in-house course, we're happy from a PMO Learning perspective to use any tool that you use. We've used quite a few over the last couple of years, but typically we will use Zoom, as we are today, as a kind of a standard format for doing things like kind of video, any audios, to demonstrate, kind of display the PowerPoint presentation, chats, breakout rooms, etc. And we sometimes use polls, but we do use some other technology. Now, the important thing from our perspective is none of that other technology actually kind of costs you any money. So we use Mentimeter, Miro, and a free version of Trello to support you through the course. And again, Hannah is always in and around. She'll work with you prior to the course. She's there every morning on the course just to make sure that we don't have any technical issues, or if we do, she'll work with you to make sure that they're overcome and it doesn't impact your learning. So let's have a quick look in terms of the P3O certification. Just a couple of things. We do offer the foundation certificate and the practitioner certificate, and there is some kind of differences both in terms of the content and particularly in terms of what's been assessed when you go into the final exam, and that obviously has an influence in terms of how we run the training. Sorry, am I not sharing my slides? Thank you. No. Thank you for that. Schoolboy error. Right then, thank you. So the P3O certification, there is a difference between, as I said, the foundation certificate and the practitioner certificate. The foundation, which is as it leads to how we train the course out, the exercises that we do, and obviously some of the practice exam questions. So in a foundation certificate, what we do is we use the textbook, and the idea is by the time you finish the course, as it says there, successful candidates have demonstrated they have sufficient knowledge and understanding of the P3O guidance to interact effectively or act as an informed member of that P3O. So the idea is you understand the job that you do and how it fits in with the overall picture. And when it comes to the exam, what we're doing is assessing as to whether you know all of the various different bits of elements, and you understand what they mean. And we've seen is a kind of a multiple choice exam. And we'll kind of come back to kind of what multiple choice means as I've got an example to show you. So that's the kind of, that gets your kind of grounding knowledge, and basically anybody and everybody who's working in and around P3 or the foundation certificate, I would suggest is applicable for. The practitioner certificate is for those people who are going to be involved in designing, implementing or managing, yes, a part of a broader P3O structure. So if you're a project office manager, program office manager, or you're setting up, even a project or program manager who's setting up a PMO for their particular project or program, then this becomes more relevant for you. So the important thing, the big kind of step change between the foundation and the practitioner, as it is for any of the Axelos products, is this step up from just knowing and understanding what's involved to being able to take that theory and do two things. Firstly, be able to apply it. So can I take the theory and can I actually kind of use it in practice on a day-to-day basis? So when I'm looking at designing a PMO, can I take all of the theory and actually come up with what is a sensible, usable, effective design for a P3O structure in my organization? Do I understand, how to kind of implement a PMO, and can I put together the overall kind of project program to do that implementation with all of the kind of the correct steps involved? So it's very much about application. But it's also about evaluation. So can I look at our current structure of a P3O structure and identify where it's perhaps not where it should be? Can I look at a way the role has been defined and what that role is doing, and identify that actually that's not the way it should be or could be in the organisation? So at the practitioner certificate, what we're looking at is application and evaluation. So the interesting bit about application and evaluation, you can't do application and evaluation in a kind of in a vacuum. So no one understand. All we need is the textbook to say, do you know this bit? Do you understand that bit? When it comes to the practitioner exam, because we don't know the situation that you're in, what we're talking about at this level is saying we're going to give you a case study, we're going to give you a scenario, we're going to describe an organisation with a range of projects and programmes, typically a strategic programme, and we're going to look at, if we were the PMO manager, if we were a PMO consultant and going into that organisation and saying, actually, this is how we would structure and set up a PMO for this particular scenario. So that's the whole kind of flavour of the course. What they'll also say is, in this scenario, this has happened and this has been implemented. Do we think that's a good idea? So we do that evaluation to decide on whether the theory has been applied correctly. Couple of things just to note when we talk about this kind of application of theory to a scenario. There's firstly is that it doesn't preclude us from having conversations about what's happening in our real organisations. So we have to provide a scenario so people get an understanding of kind of how it's applied, because we all work in different organisations. But we still very much in our organisations very much want people to understand how it applies in the organisations that they currently work at. So we tend to use the scenarios when we're doing the exercises and we're going through the exam questions. But what we also do is we provide opportunities to discuss and look at and reflect on how it's applied in our organisations. And again, depending on how much information we as a delegate want to share, means we also get some input from me as the trainer, but also from questions and challenges from the other delegates as well. So as you come on the course at the practitioner level, you get to see how it's been applied and get to do a bit more evaluation, not just against the scenario, but also looking at how other organisations have applied it. I think the second thing that also kind of comes through is when we're applying it against the scenario, is the understanding of how much and when and why it's tailored. Any of the best management practice books will say, what we don't want you to do is we don't want you to take the book and try to apply it exactly as in the book. It's about understanding what's in the book and how to apply that to a given scenario, and recognizing that actually sometimes, you know, we need to kind of tailor things and do things kind of slightly differently and do a kind of a combination of this and that, because that's what's most appropriate. So again, we will have the conversation in the scenario about doing that tailoring. But again, that comes about, I think, much more when we talk about kind of the individual's perspectives of the organisations that they're working, because they're much richer descriptions. Obviously, the scenario, we can't give you a book and kind of give you kind of interview people from the organisation. So it is a very much a kind of a small scenario to get our head round. But when we've got people there on the course that can talk in kind of with much more richness, much more detail about an organisation, it's an interesting element to start thinking about how things are tailored. So that's really the big kind of step change between the kind of foundation course and the practitioner course. And that kind of plays through as well when it comes through to the syllabus. If you look at the syllabus for the practitioner course, it's exactly the same as the syllabus, you know, in terms of the top level, in terms of the subject areas and the sections, as it is for the foundation course. So on the foundation course, we have an overview which kind of just introduces us for those of you who weren't really absolutely sure of the definition of projects, programs and portfolios as used within the Axelos product, and the basics around what a PMO is. Before we go into the kind of the 5 key sections of the why bother having a P3O, so the business case for the P3O, how we design models and how we tailor that, what the key roles are in the organisation, how to implement and re-energise, but then how to operate a P3O, so looking at the tools and techniques. If you look at the practitioner certificate, we've got all of those same 5 sections. We just don't do the overview section to start with. What is kind of quite different perhaps then is how we actually approach the delivery. And we kind of, each of those 5 sections is gone through, and we kind of do 3 things. Firstly, we do a recap of the foundation knowledge. So this is, we don't kind of spend hours on that. I'm not reteaching the whole practitioner, the foundation course. I couldn't do that. The foundation course is 3 days, the practitioner is 2. But what we do is we have some key summary slides that just kind of remind us about what was in the theory from a foundation course. And then there's typically for each of those sections, there is some additional kind of knowledge, some additional theory that we need to introduce. So one of the the challenges, particularly when you come on the foundation courses, you look at the textbook and think, I've got to learn all of that. And actually, it's the syllabus document that really makes the difference, because the syllabus states very clearly, this is what you need to pass the foundation exam. And actually, the syllabus then says, and these are the additional elements you need to use for the practitioner. So we cover that off, the additional theory. And then we do some exercises, which is predominantly around the exam questions. And the reason why we spend our time doing the exam questions is because they refer specifically to the scenario. So we do have a couple of other exercises we put in there where we use some kind of real life examples that we, as I say, we try to encourage you to think about the scenario in your organisation. But a lot of what we do that draws out the learning and draws out the ability to apply and evaluate the application is going through the exam questions. As I say, I don't apologise for that, because that is really kind of where we can kind of demonstrate the lessons that need to be applied at the practitioner level. And I think for those of you who came on the foundation course, kind of recognise, it's when we go through the answers and the wrong answers as well as the right answers that we really get to round up our conversation, because just knowing the right answer isn't enough. You want to understand why answers are the wrong answers. So why, kind of what were the things that made us think it was the right answer, perhaps, when actually it wasn't. So that's an important part of doing that. So I thought it would just be useful just to give you an example of perhaps one particular area. So I thought we'd just have a quick look at rules. So this is a part of the kind of the section that we would cover off, and I thought I'd then go on and just to take you through some kind of some sample exam questions so you can kind of see how it works. So our recap of the foundation is really just one slide. Yeah, so in the foundation exam, we spend a whole afternoon. We've got a really large exercise where we go and explore all of the different rules, understand what's involved with them, understand what the kind of 3 different categories are, etc., and their relationship with each other. In the practitioner, we literally do the slide to remind ourselves of the 3 different types of roles and the 21 different role descriptions. And we may have a little bit of conversation if people can't quite remember what a role does. But very quickly, we then get on to looking at a little bit more detail of the types of individuals and the types of skills and competencies that we want in each of these roles, because at the foundation level, understanding the roles and what they do is kind of what we need. Once we get into the practitioner level, we're going to have to be starting to write role descriptions. We're going to have to be kind of recruiting people into these roles in order to kind of build up our PMO. So this is where kind of the application is. So we go through kind of kind of who's going to be the head of the P3O, the types of skills they need. We'll talk about the types of what they do in their job, who they're going to speak to, why all of these skills are important, and what they're going to be using them for. We talk about kind of the wide range of skills and capability that's across the team. We talk about some of the challenges about, if you want all of the roles covered and you've only got 3 people, how do you kind of split that? We talk about how do you allocate those roles and the ways we do that. And that's always an interesting kind of conversation where we to talk with the delegates there about kind of what roles, what the job titles that people have, and how do they split. We'll talk about perhaps how we develop some of these additional kind of skills that are not necessarily obvious. And one of the interesting elements is this concept of doing portfolio management, and about again, we talk through some real life examples where individuals, kind of friends and colleagues of ours have gone in to run portfolio officers, but have been given project administrators with a low level of knowledge of project and program management, who are fantastic administrators, but don't necessarily have the kind of the wider business skills and the political awareness, the business and industry knowledge to be able to work at portfolio level. Well, you're helping the organisation to actually kind of deliver its strategy, you can't do that with individuals who don't understand the business and that you're working within. So again, we talk about that, and what kind of comes out with some of these conversations is some kind of recognition around some of the challenges that they're facing, because they've just got a single PMO in the organisation and they're doing a mixture of project, programme and kind of portfolio support. So we talk about kind of some of those individual challenges. So that's where that kind of additional theory would come in. Following on from that, one of my favourite exercises in the course, and again, this is not an exam question one, this is where we kind of do some kind of real stuff. I've got 11, I think we've got 11 CVs at the last count, which have all been cleansed, so hopefully we can't recognise the individuals, and we share the 11 CVs out amongst the group. We work in 3 or 4 groups depending on the number of delegates we've got in the course, and what we say is have a look through those CVs and see if you can identify what role you think you would give this individual, if you would give them anything at all, because we're quite happy, and it's always interesting to see people's responses. I wouldn't give this person anybody because their grammar's rubbish. Okay, even though they've got good skills and experience. So that real kind of personal aspect comes in. But it's interesting because we then start looking at not just about kind of understanding the roles, but we're starting to think about, well, why would we offer this person? What is it we're actually going to be looking for to do that? How they're going to kind of, what do they need to be able to do in their role in order to kind of use these skills and capability, and where perhaps might they struggle, what might we have to compensate elsewhere. I think the other thing as well, which kind of comes out in this conversation, as to whether we would want them to work at project level, program level or portfolio level. And I think this again is some of the kind of the nuances and some of the things that we see when we go out potentially looking for jobs or recruiting, and we see kind of PMO administrator, PMO analyst, and you think, well, actually, is that person going to be working at project level? Are they going to be working at program level? Are they going to be working at portfolio level? Are they going to be working in the centre of excellence and actually be pulling up, developing the standards and processes for the organisation? So some of the nuances between kind of working in a centre of excellence and working in a portfolio office, or what comes out in this kind of conversation and discussion. Now, we don't tend to get any of that at the kind of the foundation level, because it's about just understanding the role per se. This is about kind of picking real people to kind of undertake those roles. So I think that's a really interesting kind of exercise to do, and it's great to get other people's perspectives. And it also highlights some of the different structures of PMO models that have been applied in the various different delegates organisations. So this, I thought we would, that's a kind of an exercise that we devised, and I thought it would be useful just to kind of demonstrate what the P3O practitioner exam is, and kind of how it's kind of quite different from the foundation exam. So the exam is 2.5 hours long, and it's objective test examination. It's a multiple choice exam, but we'll come on to kind of why that's different. So essentially you've got 4 questions. Each question has got 20 different elements to it. So there's 20 marks per 4 questions. And now those of you who are astute will have said, well, we've got 5 syllabus areas. Eileen, why have we only got 4 questions? And it's because we've only got kind of the 20 marks per question. And so any exam paper will only examine 4 out of the 5 sections. Okay, so you'll never get all 5 sections on the paper. Which 4? Nobody knows. Yes, so the trainers don't know which 4 sections are going to come up. So you can ask me all you like, I won't be able to help you. So we will cover all 4 elements of the syllabus in the course, but you'll only get 4 in the exam. So the idea is that it's a 2.5 hour exam. What you get, the first part of the exam paper is a scenario. So whatever we've used on the course isn't relevant. So the first kind of 15-20 minutes or so is about reading and understanding the new scenario that you're going to have to apply the theory to. Now, I always think this is good, because people say, well, why can't we have the the scenario we use the exam to use on the course. And I say, well, actually, because every time you kind of change job and potentially every time you change PMO, you're going to have to apply the theory to a different scenario. So this is kind of good practice for you to be given a scenario and to be able to think, well, actually, all of the stuff that I've learned, how am I actually going to apply it? So the idea is you've got kind of 15, 20 minutes to read the scenario, and then you've got half an hour for each of the 4 questions. It's still a 50% pass mark. The difference again with the practitioner exam, it is an open book exam. So you can actually take the manual into the exam with you. So again, whether whether you have an online book or whether you have the physical copy, you can actually take that into the exam. Now, I've seen people, particularly in the olden days when everybody had a paper copy, where they've got 150 post-it note tabs around the outside. Once you've got 150 tabs around the outside, it's neither use nor ornament to you. Okay, it's not a comprehension exercise. You do not have time to go back to the textbook and find out all of the exercises, to find out all of the text. What it is useful to is for some of the reference. So if you want to understand a particular line of a job role, then you'll go to Appendix A. If you want to find a particular service, you'd go to Appendix F. If you wanted to understand the exact numbers you need in a PMO, you'd go to page 72, I think it is. So there's some key elements. And so one of the things that we do as we go through the course to kind of help prepare for this is at the end of every exercise, reflect and say, so what did you use the textbook for as you went through that exercise? And if you didn't use the textbook at all, then that's fine. But if you did, it may be worth putting a tab into that particular part of the textbook. So when you go into the exam, I would suggest nobody has more than a dozen, and I would suggest half a dozen is nearer the mark of kind of key parts of the textbook that may be of use to you during the exam.
Can I just add in, sorry,
Yes.
People have specific guidelines on the marking and stuff that you can have in your manual, and we will send this out before your exam, just so you know exactly where you are with what you can and can't have.
Yes, so you can have lots of scribbles in the margins. What you can't have is lots of A4 sheets of paper inserted with all of your personal notes on. Yes, so there is some, as Hannah said, there is some kind of guidelines with that. So it is an open book exam. The danger is if you kind of try and use it all the time, you will run out of time. So it's meant to be, and I think that's kind of where we are in real life, is you don't spend every day, and I haven't got mine here, I've got mine up here. I don't spend every day with it on my desk kind of looking at it in everything that I do, but every now and again, I must go and kind of check exactly what it says about that or what it does in that guidance, and that's how we want to use it as we go through the practitioner exam. So what does the exam look like? So I thought I'd remind you, for those of you who've done the foundation, this is a typical foundation exam question. It is an exam question that I've gone and took off the paper. So it says, what's the responsibility of a P3O sponsor? And it says these are 4 things. Which one is which one is relevant to the project sponsor? Anybody want to hazard a guess, see if they can get 1 mark? But all saying B, aren't we? Yes.
Yes.
So excellent. So our P3O sponsor is there to make sure that they work with the head of P3O to make sure that whatever the P3O does meets what the main board need it to be, why the PMO was set up there in the first place. So we can all get 1 mark on the foundation exam. Practitioner exam looks a lot different. Okay. So let me just I was going to put some animation in and I haven't, but I'm going to just stick it in now because I don't want it to I don't want us to frighten us too soon. Let me just get rid of that second one for a moment. So what they have in the scenario, and I've typed it up there, and this is part of a CV that they've said. And they're looking to recruit somebody for the portfolio analyst role. And one of the bullet points in the CV says that this individual has developed management dashboards to support strategic decision making. Okay, so that's fine. Now, what we're trying to do here, then, it says we're going to give you 2 bits to try and kind of work out whether this is right. So is this assertion correct? Okay, so is this true or false? So does the entry describe experience that is directly relevant to the responsibility of a PMO, of a portfolio analyst role? So do we think that assertion is true? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Everybody nods. Yes, Eileen, that is true. Yes. So the assertion is true. Yes. But that's not enough to get you a point. Yes. For a practitioner exam. Because what they want to know is that you know that, yes, that's relevant, but they want to understand why it's relevant. That's back to the kind of application and the evaluation. So in order to get a point for the practitioner exam, you also get a second point, which looks as though I haven't actually fully typed it in. That's interesting that hasn't come through. This is what happens when you there's been lots going on this morning. Let me just quickly get to that to finish. I've got the exam question open here on the other side. And hold on, I apologize for that. There we go. Because this should say I was convinced this was all done. But give me 2 seconds. I shall make it so. Should say. Always happens when you're doing the recording of these as well, doesn't it? Yes, is the production of management dashboards is a key responsibility of the portfolio analyst. So the first thing we need to do, apologies for that, is to assess, is that second statement true? Is it a part of the role of the portfolio analyst to create management dashboards? We're all happy that that's true?
Yes.
And then the third thing we also need to assess, is to get our point, is to say, is the assertion true because of that particular reason? So is this part of the CV directly relevant to the responsibility of the role because the portfolio analyst has to create management dashboards? Is that the reason why it is true? Yes. And from that, we can ascertain that the right answer is A. So the assertion is true, the reason is true, and the reason explains the assertion. Isn't that a horrible question? And you need to work all of that out just to get a single mark on the practitioner. So this is the real difference, I think, between, in a foundation exam, we'd say, does a portfolio analyst create management dashboards? Yes, that gets you a point. Here, we have to recognize what kind of experience is relevant and why that experience is relevant and why this kind of CV would be applicable for that particular role. So they could have said, because the left-hand side would still be true, but they could have put on the left-hand side is because the portfolio analyst gets involved in project prioritization. Another true statement, but doesn't necessarily support why the left-hand side is true. So interestingly, at the practitioner level, and it's always really difficult from an examination perspective about how do we assess people's ability to evaluate and apply the knowledge. And so at the practitioner level, so I'm happy that people who do the kind of people like e-learning, you can do the practice exams. I genuinely believe that having exam practice at the practitioner level is absolutely key, so you understand how the various different exam questions work. So this is just one type of exam type question. At the practitioner level, there's a number of other types of question that we would have as well, but it really does dig below the surface. You see that's a very different exam to exam questions, one of the kind of the standard foundation exam questions. So any questions, comments around what the kind of the P3O practitioner course covers, how it's different from the foundation course, what you'll get from it, whether it's relevant to you or how we deliver it? Anything that I've left off that you might want to hope to have picked up today?
I've got a bit of information about exam pass rates and things like that, if people are interested. So as of yesterday, our pass rate for P3O Foundation is 96%, and our practitioner pass rate is 100%.
So no pressure, guys.
So,
well, I didn't know. That's news to me. I didn't know those numbers. Which is quite good, I think, at the practitioner level. Normally, it's around 70%.
And we do have delegates who have had a big gap in between their foundation and practitioner, but the pass rate kind of speaks for itself in the sense that you will be prepared to sit your exam during the training.
Yeah. And it's always a balance for a training organisation, because we obviously, it's important that people pass their exams, but for me, I think it's just as important that people get the opportunity to discuss it, real life situations, and all of our trainers, in fact, one of our trainers who does the course actually still works full time in the PMO. She takes days holidays to do training. We're all a bit mad in the PMO way, but so it's not as if we've just learned the textbook and can kind of tell you what's in the textbook. All of our trainers have worked in PMOs, so kind of recognise and have a broader discussion than just kind of getting us through the exam. I think the other thing as well is a lot of the training companies, and I think we're doing one this year where you do the foundation and the practitioner as one full sweep, and we've consciously kind of given people the opportunity to do the foundation separately and then do the exam a bit further down the line, so it just gives them an opportunity to absorb the foundation before they then do the kind of the application. It gives them a chance to kind of think about the theory, go back into the workplace and start observing things through slightly different lenses before they then come in and do the practitioner course and the exam.
Yeah. So we have
put your camera on, Hannah, then we can see you.
Sorry. So we have a couple of foundation courses coming up. So the next one is on the 20th. You've got them, yeah. And the full week course is in September, and we do offer a bundle price for people to looking to book both of those courses together, and you can get in touch with Charlie. He can point you in the right direction with that and send you a quote.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. I'll put my details in the chat as well. So if you have any specific questions or you'd like to have any other conversations, feel free to give me a shout or just drop me a message in the chat, and I'll be happy to get back.
I just want to just a couple of other things that I do want to just say that we do. And again, a number of organisations have kind of taken us up on this. Is when you've kind of been on the course, it's all well and good, kind of this stuff. We do offer in-house delivery. So we could come and run a foundation course or a practitioner course just for people from your particular organisation. Now, the interesting bit there is, remember we talked about this whole kind of concept of a scenario, is that actually I can spend a small amount of time just with a small bit of information about your organisation, and we can spend more of the exercise time looking at how it applies to your particular organisation. And you've got the joy then of having all of the other people, or a kind of a good selection of people from your organisation, about how it can apply. So what you end up with is not just kind of, we still pass the exam because we still do all of the theory to pass the exam, but what you have got then is a kind of an action list, or a kind of certainly a springboard to start thinking about how you want to continue to develop your PMO in your organisation. So we can either do that as a kind of a certification course, or we can actually just come in and do a 1 day. And I'm doing this for an organisation in the summer, is I'm coming in and just doing a 1 day. A number of people have been on the course, and we're just doing a kind of a discovery session about how they want to use that to support portfolio management in their organisation. So it's not a certification course. They're not doing the exam at the end of it. A lot of people in the organisation have done it, but we will come in and just do kind of a 1 day and focus on one particular element in terms of how that can be applied. And then we also offer a whole range of one-to-one coaching. And again, I did a coaching session this morning, somebody who'd been on one of our courses. She is a sole PMO manager in a very large organisation. She doesn't have anybody of the equivalent kind of experience and seniority in the organisation who understands PMOs. So we have a once-a-month call just to kind of so, and it's really kind of so she can kind of bounce ideas, and we can kind of talk about kind of, again, it's not a kind of, oh, page 76 says this, but really about kind of how things are in her organisation and how kind of bits of the theory can help. So those services are available. Again, Charles can provide you with any information as you require. So in terms of the courses we've got, those are the next 5 sets of courses that we've got coming up from PMO Learning. You'll see there's a practitioner on there. We've got another foundation course in June. A couple of other courses on there. Certainly the P3O courses are about kind of understanding where your PMO sits, about establishing the right PMO for your organisation. You'll see we've got some essentials courses there, one for administrators and one for analysts. These are the new certifications that have come out from the House of PMO, and these are about helping you undertake your individual roles. So very much focused on individual roles, whereas the P3O courses are very much around the PMOs that you're working. So the difference between those. If you've got any questions at all, we do have a telephone number. Hannah and Charles are very good at picking up the phone. We've got a hello email address. You can write to them. So Charles has put his details in. Hannah, are you going to quickly
put your
I'll
just put mine in now
as well? So if you want to kind of contact them direct, you can do, or you can find more details on any of our courses at our website at pmolearning.co.uk.